It's the TEH podcast, episode number 265, with Leo Notenboom of AskLeo.com and Gary Rosenzweig of MacMost.com. This week, what happens to Ask Leo and MacMost as AI evolves, and when we first touched computers?
So, Gary,
Yeah.
I'm having kind of an existential crisis.
Yeah.
I've been using Claude occasionally for a number of things. I'll talk about some of the technical stuff later if we've got time. But one of the things I often do is if I'm kind of iffy on a question, I'll just take somebody's question verbatim, copy paste it into Claude, and see what it comes up with. And over the last couple of years, it's been getting better and better and better. To the point where, no, it's not good enough yet, but I can see the writing on the wall. Just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I updated an article, how I use AI at Ask Leo, because I do. And there was a scenario in there where, the old article, I threw in a question, it came up with answers that were answer adjacent to what I was looking for, right?
Yeah.
It gave me some very interesting information that didn't really answer the question. Whereas, and that was 2 years ago. Yesterday, I threw a different question because things have moved on. And it gave me an answer where I said, this isn't how I would write it. And I quibble with a couple of minor points. But if somebody asked Claude this question and it gave them this answer, I would not feel uncomfortable. I would be satisfied that, if they understood the answer, that they had gotten the answer that they want.
Right.
So that, like I said, I can read the writing on the wall. I don't want to say that we're screwed, but in the very long run, yeah, we're probably screwed. What do we do?
Yeah. I look at more as like, there's icebergs ahead. You can't just, keep going straight. You're going to have to maneuver
Right.
or we're going down. So there's going to be some work to be done to figure out what the future of sites like Ask Leo and MacMost are, because it's going to change. That's
No
the
kidding.
only certainty I think is it's going to have to change somehow. Will it change in a way that our two sites are still there and that we're needed, or not? That's the big question.
And I think, you know what? I honestly believe that the answer is no. Our sites will at some point in the future no longer be needed.
Yeah.
I think that much is pretty clear. What isn't clear is when that happens and what things look like between now and then. We've already been affected, right? As soon as Google started throwing AI summaries in the search results, our traffic went down because people, quote unquote, didn't really need us anymore, right?
Yep.
They got the answer from Google. Now the same kind of thing is happening with AI, although in your notes you raised some really good comments on, or some really good points on the state of AI today. Like it's still hallucinating and it's still not quite understanding. I get this all the time where I'll ask a question about a particular piece of software and it'll give me an answer based on the previous version or the previous version of that software rather than the version that I'm actually using, the current version.
Yeah, and that's I imagine a worse problem for Mac users because of the yearly major updates to Mac OS, which doesn't necessarily mean that like things have changed so much that there's new things you can do or you can't do. It's just that where things are change.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep.
The answer you would expect from me would be to what Mac OS right now. How do you do this? But the answer you often get from AI is correct, but correct for 3 years ago.
Right.
It doesn't realize that there's been a change.
And what's funny is that if you point that out
Hmm.
to the AI, it will often go back
Yeah.
and then come back with a right answer,
Oh yeah, it loves doing that.
which is very bizarre.
Anything it gets wrong, it will pat you on the back for pointing that out. I mean, it does a great job of that, right? Of you saying, no, it doesn't work that way. It has to do this way. And then it goes and says, yes, you're right. And that really drills right to the point of the matter that you have to, the details are what counts. And let's get things straight here. And it's like very positive. It's like, I always say that, these large language model AIs, they're like having an assistant, like, somebody you hire, like an intern,
Sure.
a and it's like having an intern that is never afraid to admit when they are wrong. Like they will do it. Like if you say no, you're wrong, happily, happily. Oh, you are so right. We need to get this straight. Let's create a new list and let's make sure that the details are correct. And you're like, all right, calm down. You know, but
What's interesting is that, I mean, it's been accused of sycophancy for a couple of years now,
yeah.
but it's actually one of those things where I believe in your um, predefined setup, right? The configuration for your account,
Mhm.
or in those AIs that support projects, you could also do it in the setup for a project. You could say, essentially, you use different words, but you could say, don't suck up so
Yeah,
much.
I do that, and still, so I wonder what other people see because I already have some things in there that should tone that down a bit.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of annoying that it does that. It'll get things wrong, but it'll not necessarily like get it wrong. Like it'll tell you to do A when you should do B, but it doesn't always give you the clearest path to what, because it's just learned on blog posts and what other people
Sure.
have wrote and all that. So
Right.
sometimes it gets stuff wrong. Like that, where it's just a little bit off. It's not incorrect, but it's leaving something out or it's giving you too much. And other times it's not so clear because I deal a lot with lists, right? A lot of my videos are lists, 10 ways
Hmm.
to do this, 5 ways to do that, that kind of
Right.
thing. And people like these lists because they give you options. When you say, here's the way to do this, and somebody says, oh, that's going to be a pain for me to do. If they know there's actually 3 other ways to do it, and
Right.
one of them is like, oh, no, that fits in with my workflow. Um, so I'm always making lists, and I always ask either Claude or ChatGPT for a list. Sometimes I will play dumb and just be like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. Please give me a list. Sometimes I'll give it the list and I'll say,
Mhm.
what else? And when I play dumb and do it, it's good because the reason I do it is occasionally it gives me an item that I forgot. Oh yeah, I should
Mhm.
mention that. Glad
Absolutely.
number 7 in its list of 10 is something I didn't think of, and I'll add it to mine. But the other ones are mostly ones I already have. It'll not leave out ones that I can think of, so it's not
Right.
perfect in that.
Right.
And it'll repeat itself a lot. Matter of fact, I just was doing this today where I gave it a list of here's what I want to cover. And I know how it works. I know if I say, here's 10 things, are there any more? It says, oh, this is great. Let's make a list. And it gives me my 10 things back to me.
Right.
And then it gives me some more. And it's like, don't bot. So I said, don't mention these again. I got them. Give me extras. And half of those extras were repeats, but in a slightly different, sometimes there's 2 ways to say something.
Right.
You
Right.
know, like you could say, like for instance, what I was dealing with today, copy and paste, but you could say, oh, the clipboard, right?
Right.
So sometimes it would phrase it in such a way. It's like, yeah, you didn't use any of the words I said, but this is the same. Your number 3 is the same as my number 4,
Right.
and you're just so it's not quite getting everything. It's not perfect yet, but it is, of course, just going to keep getting better and
I was
better.
going to say, this is the state of AI today. And as I've
Yeah,
said multiple times, this is the worst AI we're ever going to see,
yeah,
which means that the kind of things that we're currently kind of grousing about are the kinds of things that are going to go away. It's
yeah.
going to get better. Um, One of the things that I think about a lot when I think about what value do you and I bring to the table
Mhm.
is that honestly, our audience, a large portion of our audience, they don't know how to ask the question.
Yeah.
They don't have the vocabulary.
Hmm.
They don't have the mental models that this is how things kind of sort of work. So their questions are frequently very far away from enough to actually give them the answer that they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's something that you and I take care of by having essentially a conversation with these
Hmm.
individuals and say, okay, did you mean this or did you mean that? Those kinds of things. And you end up narrowing it down to, oh, you're looking for this. Okay, here, this is what you want. Whereas AIs aren't there yet. I think a lot of people don't know to let the AI ask them questions.
Right. Yeah. Because I get that a lot where it's not, the question is incomplete, right? They haven't provided enough details, basically. So there
Right.
has to be a little bit of back and forth. And
And
AI,
it's also language, right? I mean, they don't know the words.
they don't. Oh yeah, that happens a lot. So and when there's a bit of back and forth, AI really attempts to try to answer the question immediately.
Mhm.
Make some. I mean, again, this is just how it is now, right? But
Right.
it tries to like make some guesses and jump right to it. It wants to give you an answer,
Yes.
whereas I don't. I mean, I want to give you an answer, but if I recognize that I don't have enough information, even if it's just, oh, they can mean two different things here, I will often be like, well, I'm not going to bother. First of all, I'm not going to give them both answers because they only want one. I'm not going to bother writing the one answer until I know what it is they want. So I will ask, do you mean this or this?
Right.
Um, and and then of course the
But
thing is, as you probably know, that that 80% of the time you never hear back again, which then is a huge time saver because you never had to actually come up with the answer. Um,
the a great example of what I face on a semi-regular basis actually
mhm,
is people say, I don't have enough memory in my computer.
mhm.
What they really mean is disk
It's
space.
storage, yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that AI is going to take you at your word, right?
Yes, yeah,
Whereas today, I should say, AI is going to take you at your word, whereas you and I will know much, much more from the context of how the question is phrased that, oh no, they're really talking about this other thing. But
mhm.
again, that is the kind of thing that eventually the AIs are indeed going to get better at.
I actually, I think that that's a good example of something they already are better at. Like this specific example we're talking about, I bet you that if I asked a question and I said that I had 8 gigs of memory and blah, 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 the question draws from that, it would assume I meant memory. If I then went and said I have 1 terabyte of memory, it
Right.
would then assume I meant storage. I bet you it
Interesting.
already does that.
It could, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because that's the sort of like context clues it's good at. But when it's a completely different term, when somebody says, for instance, on a Mac, it's they say, "Oh, in the taskbar, what do I do?" And I'm like, "There's no taskbar." You could mean the menu bar, you could mean the dock. One looks more like the taskbar, one sounds more like the taskbar. They both have a lot of overlap. I'm not answering a
Funny.
question until you clarify what it is you want.
That's
And
funny. You
yeah.
know where that person, what system that person
Oh
uses
yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So, or like when somebody asks, like, how do I print screen? It's like, oh, yeah, okay, you don't mean print screen, but yeah, I know you've been using computers for a while, and they've been on the Windows side. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's in the future, I think we're going to have to look at things, and I already do a lot of this, teaching the things that people they're not actually asking questions like how do I do this or that I'm having a problem or whatever. But we come up with things where you didn't know you wanted to know that.
Right.
Here's a post or a video that is like something cool you can do with this piece of software with your computer, whatever it is. And the person had no idea that they were going to learn that today, but as soon as they see it, they're like, "Ooh, this could be interesting. This could
Right.
help me. I didn't know we could do that, and now that's going to save me some time or allow me to create something I didn't know before." The AI is not going to for a long time be good at actually just telling you, "Hey, guess what? I
Did
think,
you know? Yeah.
did you know this? Because, just based on like me spying on you and what you're doing on your computer, I think you would probably benefit from knowing that you could do this on your computer. Um, I mean, at that point, at some point you're getting to the intersection of if the AI is good enough to figure out what it is you need to know and then tell you about it. At that point, it's probably just good enough to do it for you. Which is what we're already seeing with things like Claude Cowork and everything like
Right.
that.
Right.
So, the idea is if there's some cool technique, and AI is going to say, you should know this technique because of what you do. At that point, you would just be asking the AI to do things for you, and it would be doing it, the cool technique, for you. Instead, would it
Yeah.
be the real thing? And I mean, we're getting to that. Like, just as an example, something to do in a graphics app. Right now you could go find a tutorial that says like how to make, eyes pop in a portraits in a thing. And it's like 17 steps, doing this, and there's a mask involved, and there's, brightness controls and color and all this. And you could see that and say, oh, that's cool. I do a lot of portraits. Let me see if I can learn something from this. But there's also going to be the thing where at some point you're just going to ask AI, make this portrait look good.
Right.
And it's going
Right.
to say, this could benefit from the eyes, being brighter. And
Yeah.
it's
And
going to
that
do
is
all
already
those
happening
steps.
today. Yeah. That
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is happening today.
So we're already seeing it. And then it's just going to expand to cover most things until eventually we're Star Trek. And we don't even have keyboards anymore. And we're just telling our computers to, do things, get me the
Yeah.
engineering specs for uh, you know, the
Yeah.
nacelles so we can boost the warp coefficient for the,
One of the
and all that.
things we never saw on the Star Trek uh, keyboards, I guess, or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
those touch panels, you never saw a QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah. Yeah. They were gone. They were outlawed in that war that happens later in the century. That was probably what it was fought over, honestly.
Probably.
Yeah.
One of the things that AI will not do, to go back to our memory versus storage discussion,
Hmm.
is I think you're right. I think that from the context, it may do a better job of understanding what it is you're talking about, but it will not correct you when it should.
Mm.
In other words, you say, hey, I've got, terabyte of memory, and it'll assume you mean storage,
Yep.
but it won't tell you that that's not really the right term. Whereas, given given that I see it so often, it's like one of my go-to answers is, well, before I answer this question, terminology matters. And, in fact, I've actually got an article, what's the difference between memory and disk space? It comes up that often. But that's the kind of a thing that, like I
Hmm.
said, AI right now isn't necessarily going to correct you on. Maybe if you asked it to, it would. Uh, maybe if you
Yeah.
asked the question in such a way that said, hey, I've got this, and this going on, and I'd like to be able to do this. What's the answer? And by the way, please tell me if I'm using my terminology correctly, or if there's a more efficient way to ask this question. That's the kind of stuff that I think AI is able to do right now, if you know to ask for it.
Yeah. And I know that, the double, kind of the double AI thing for people that do images and video with AI. That's a big deal, is actually not creating the prompt to create the video or create the image yourself, but
Okay.
first prompting the
Right.
text to get the prompt to then
Right.
send to the image or video generator.
Right.
And yeah, that's a really common thing to do. So yeah, we're going to get there eventually, and we already see it. If you use Claude like I do, you see how it shows you what it's thinking
Right.
as it's going along the way, and it's basically reprompting itself a lot.
Mhm.
It's taking your 7 sentences for your complex prompt, and it's expanding on that based on things it finds and steps. So it's getting pretty interesting. Now, like I said, we could still come up with these topics that people didn't know they wanted to know. And AI is not going to just wake them up in the morning and tell them
I
this.
think
They're going to have to ask. So that's like one place that we could still be needed for a
it's
while at
interesting
least.
because I've mentioned that, while we play in kind of the same pool, we're at different ends, right?
Yeah.
You basically do a lot of feature exploration and discovery, right? How
Hmm.
to's and Look, here's this new feature. Whereas I'm more problem driven, right?
Hmm.
People come to me with problems and we come up with answers to those. In your case, your channel is essentially all about education, showing people
Yeah.
new stuff that they maybe weren't familiar with or didn't know about completely.
Hmm.
My challenge has always been to answer the question
Hmm.
while sneaking in some education at the same time. Because especially when people have questions, what they're looking for is the answer to the question, damn it, right? They want that answer and they want to be able
Yes.
to just solve the problem and move on with whatever they're doing.
I get that. I get that a lot.
And
I love fielding the comments from those.
oh yeah,
When somebody says, you took 7 minutes to answer my question. And
yep.
when I see those, I light up and I respond with something like, oh, I will try my best to teach less in my next video.
I'm going to have to remember that because I get that exact same comment
Yeah.
on many of my videos.
Teach
Um,
less, or I say something like, I'll try to leave out details and alternate ways of doing things and limit your options in the future. Stuff like that. I mean, it's just like, and
I'll
it
try to
really
be
comes.
less clear. Yeah,
Yeah, and it really comes down to like sometimes if I'm feeling like the person actually is not just being snarky, and I'll say something like the point of my channel, the goal of my channel is to educate and teach you about how to use your Mac and get the most from it.
right,
And that's what my videos are going to be about. I'm not going to do straightforward, here's a problem, here's a solution, I'm done. I
right.
want you to understand
Yep,
the problem and learn more things.
yep.
So if you don't want that, I guess my channel's not for you.
I was saying, I have actually said that in a couple of comments over the past couple of weeks. Said, this is the way I do things. This is why I do them this way. And if that doesn't work for you, then maybe this is the wrong channel for
Hmm.
you. Maybe
Yeah.
there are better channels that you should be looking at.
Yeah, indeed.
Um, so one of the things so everything we've talked about so far is essentially about the written word.
Yeah.
Even though we both do videos,
Mhm.
all of the things we're talking about with respect to AI have to do with text, whether it's the prompt for an image or an outline for a video or just an outline for an article or whatever it is we're using it for. It answers your question. But you and I both do a lot of demonstration.
Mhm.
We don't just necessarily talk about what we're talking about. We try to show what they're talking about. We both do demonstrations of what we're talking about. And
Mhm.
I can see that on the radar. Again, right? The writing is on the wall, but that wall is a long ways away, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to say to an AI, please generate a video that discusses this topic and shows how to do a specific thing in Windows. The prompt would be overly complex. Heck, it would be faster to record the video than it would be to craft the prompt that would be required for AI to generate that video, especially since our videos are usually in the, like the 10-minute range.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many nuances to what we're demonstrating that I just don't see AI being able to do that yet.
Yeah, and that's true. I it'll get there though. I have
Of course.
seen some things and I've tried some things and it's not there, but it will yeah, it scares me a little bit. I've been definitely thinking about all of this that we've been talking about, and trying to realize that, I mean, I'm already not very oriented on problem solving. Like, I don't like to do the videos like you do that are like, this is broken, here's how to fix it. I like to
Right.
do, how-to videos. Um, but I think of, uh, the TV programs that used to be on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, like, a science guy talking about science, or Bob Ross talking about painting,
Right.
or something like that, where you wouldn't necessarily tune in because you saw that this week it was going to be on a certain topic.
Right.
You would just tune in
Right. Yep.
regardless
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and say, I'm going to learn something. And I want to gear my show more towards being like that, where
Mhm.
you'd come in and just watch what I'm going to talk about because you may learn something because you're interested in what I'm talking about. And
So you're
then,
saying you're the Bob Ross
yeah,
of Mac
I'm the Mr.
videos.
Science or whatever of, yeah. Bill Nye of Mac stuff. The So there's that, and that's like the pivot, that I'm talking about. There's always been pivot in everything, that people like us do, right? We have to keep changing. MacMost has changed over the
Of
years
course.
in lots of ways. Ask Leo as well. We pivot here and there. This is kind of unusual in that we see the pivot. We see that it's a big pivot and it's coming, right? Because it's
That,
something is AI is coming for our jobs.
it is. And what's different, though, is that I was thinking about that because you use the word pivot, and that makes a tremendous amount of sense. But the pivots we've been facing over the course of the last, and like in my case, 20 years, they haven't been massive. They haven't
Right.
been existential. The biggest pivot I suspect I've ever made is my focus on video. Right. Originally, Ask Leo was 100% written
Hmm.
content. And then eventually I ended up adding more and more video. And now it's like the most important thing that the site offers. Um, the pivot that's coming, I don't know what it looks like. It's going to be much, much bigger. Um, and part of me says, uh, let's ride what we're doing for as long as we can,
Yeah.
because I do think it's going to be years before there's something that I would comfortably say replaces us. Um, ride it as long as we can, and then you know what? Wish it a fond farewell. And the pivot is also referred to as retirement, which of course in our business, neither of us, I think, will ever actually do. So in my case, my pivot might be to be spending more time on 7takeaways.com or something like that, right? Some of the non Q&A stuff that is much more, uh, I don't know, reflective,
Hmm.
opinions and insights rather than just answers on how to do things.
Yeah. And who knows? It could be sometimes pivots lead in interesting directions. I mean, pivots that term is used a lot in the startup community, whether it's tech or not.
Hmm.
Could be anything, could be
Sure.
farming or restaurants, whatever it is. And a lot of time people are forced to pivot their business because it's just not working, or there's a big competitor that's getting in the way or something like that. And the pivot is never what you wanted, right? If it was what you wanted, you would have started
You would
with
have
it.
done that. Yes.
But so often the pivot ends up being good.
Yes.
Like it leads in this direction, and then it's like, oh, this is great. And we would never have gotten here if I didn't start off with idea A that led to the pivot that went to idea B, or even further down the line. So who knows? Maybe your idea of how Ask Leo might end up could be something that, for in many ways, could be better than what you have now. It's
Yeah.
hard to see it now.
Yep.
I
Yep.
feel the same way with MacMost. Maybe, I mean, I even think of pivoting to a smaller audience in a way. I already have done things where I'm not prioritizing my YouTube videos as much, because YouTube goes out there to lots and lots of people. A
Hmm.
lot of people see my YouTube videos that have never seen me before.
Right.
They come in with search results and they stumble upon it or whatever. Whereas my Patreon videos, everybody's seen me before. They wouldn't be a patron if they
Right.
wouldn't be there. But it's a much smaller audience. But I'm not so sure that, I'd probably rather post to my Patreon audience than my YouTube audience. So I've already started to think in terms of, instead of just attracting more people to YouTube, the main thing about YouTube is to get more people over to Patreon. And that's where my real audience is. And if at some point like the YouTube, kind of funnel from YouTube to Patreon goes away or gets reduced significantly,
Hmm.
I would have no problem then just continuing with my smaller audience,
Right.
making the videos, that they want in the way that they want them, and without having to feel like I'm like, I don't know, doing stuff that may go viral on YouTube or something like
Right.
that. Like I don't have to worry
Right.
about that. I could say, is this useful? Yes, then I'm going to do it. People will like it because it's useful. I don't have to say, oh, it's useful, but it's not going to get as many clicks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could focus more. And there's one last thing here, which I put down, which I think is kind of a good way to end this. You've probably heard the joke, that has the punchline, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just need to run faster than you. And
Right.
by you, I don't mean you, Leo. I just mean that the idea is The idea is like if you're being chased by a bear and it's like, you know, and you're in a group of people, you don't need to run faster than the bear. You just need not to be the slowest person because
Right.
that's who the
Right.
bear is going to catch. It's the same thing here. I don't think if you look at sites like ours, like whether it's YouTube channels, blogs, however you want to look at it, I don't think anything, even AI, is going to wipe everybody out. There's always going to be some room. We still have radio.
Yes.
You know, we still have AM radio, right? You know,
Barely.
so yeah, we still have magazines. You know, we still have things that have been around for. I mean, vinyl never went away, and it's probably bigger now than it was 20 years ago, right? It's
Right.
probably grown
Right.
in 20 years. So so things that work well don't necessarily go away, but they do shrink because if something comes to replace them. So it may not be that whether or not like MacMost dies because AI takes its place. It may be that there's 100 similar things out there, and 90 out of 100 are going to die because there's
Right.
just not going to be a big enough market.
Right.
I don't necessarily have to figure out like how to beat AI. I just need to make sure that I'm one of those survivors.
It's interesting because both of us, we've been doing this now for long enough that I think the fact that we've been doing this for as long as we have gives us the highest chance of continuing to do it for as long as is reasonable. Whereas
Mhm.
somebody that's only been doing it for a short period of time, and there are always newcomers in all of the spaces, they're the ones that I think are going to lose out first. They're the ones that aren't going to get the YouTube traffic or whatever other
Yeah.
traffic that they're trying to do. They're the ones that the bear is going to catch.
Yep. So, so yeah. It's not always it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Like we might be able to just survive basically on being persistent and good and
Well, there's
staying true
that.
to what
And
we do.
I think honestly, what it all kind of sort of comes down to is that we're going to survive because we're real, right?
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
we're
Well,
we're
there's the
clearly
vinyl. We're the vinyl.
we're the vinyl of tech support.
The vinyl of
Um,
tech support. Yeah.
in the sense that already we get people who are rebelling against AI that I think will go down, but I think it will end up becoming a matter of preference. Things that are obviously AI and solve your problem, great. If that works for you, great. But some people are simply going to prefer seeing a real person,
Yeah.
writing real writing. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, again, for channels that have been around for a long time, because we've already got an audience carrying us forward. I think that gives us by far the biggest chance of surviving for the longest period of time.
Yep. Exactly. So, well, we'll see.
So, speaking of AI,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than it being a threat, let's talk about it being a tool. um, I've talked in recent episodes about my use of Claude, specifically Claude Cowork, to do things.
Mhm.
It's been interesting to throw Ask Leo articles at it or have it analyze log files from my server and point out that, oh, yeah, you're under attack. You should want to do this, this, and this. So, to back up a little bit,
Mhm.
being who I am, my machines, three of them, run a script every night in the middle of the night.
Okay.
Each machine a batch file. Yep. And each does something different based on its role in my world, but it's mostly about doing things like backing up, making copies of this, archiving that, grabbing a copy of my server image once a month, or something like that.
Mhm.
What I noticed, it didn't even occur to me until I was telling it to somebody else. I have three machines that do this. One is my desktop PC. The other is a PC running Linux, and the third is my old MacBook, my old Mac Pro. So I've actually got scripts running on a Mac, Linux, and PC, and literally running in the Mac runs a PHP script, the Linux box runs a Bash script, and the Windows machine is running a script written in Python. So it's also my my learning excuse for each of those different languages, right? I've known PHP for a long time, then I decided that I wanted to rewrite stuff in Python and all that stuff. Each of those machines sends me an email every night
Hmm.
that says, here's the tail end of my log, just so you know, A, that I ran, and if there are any gross errors, you're going to see it. Of course, it's not the entire log. So I've been missing things. So what I asked Claude Cowork to do is every morning at 8 a.m., grab these three logs, get me the most recent log from this machine script, from that machine script, and from this machine script, and just tell me what's happening.
Hmm.
Tell me what's going on. And of course, it prioritizes pointing out errors. And indeed, there was an error that had been in there for a couple of months that was preventing a piece of download from working. Said, okay, great. I went in and fixed it. But it's also telling me, hey, this is working, everything's working, but you'll want to keep an eye on the disk space on this drive and all that kind of stuff. It's been fascinating because this, I think, is the first time where I've actually started to use Claude Cowork to do something for me that I would normally do myself, scanning those logs just to look for errors, and do it better than
Hmm.
I could ever do it. So I just thought that was a fascinating use of the technology. Like I said, Claude's ability to just sort of chew up log files is kind of interesting. It kind of sort of understands what they are and what they contain. What's fascinating about my log files, of course, is that they're not standard. These are just like print statements in a script where I just print out random stuff along with the output, the natural output from some of the commands. And yet, Claude chews it up, spits it out, and tells me what I did wrong. It's kind
Cool.
of cool.
Yeah, I'm becoming a big fan of Claude because I use it. As I've talked about before, I've been using Claude Code a lot. I have several personal tools now that are Claude Code created and maintained.
Mhm.
So I'm always thinking of new features, and I ask Claude Code to add them. And then I'm building a whole site of Claude coded gizmos, and having a blast doing it, mostly games, and having so much fun building it, um, and focusing on the game design. And it's actually answered a big question for me because in the past, I've developed so many games, and that was the main part of what I did for so many years. And I loved coding. And I also like coming up with the game ideas. And I always wondered if I only did one of those two things. I
Mhm.
was pretty sure if I didn't come up with the game ideas, I wouldn't enjoy the coding as much. Um, but
Right.
if I didn't code it, would I enjoy coming up with the game ideas as much? And it turns out, yeah, I know that now. I know that I could come up with the ideas. I mean, in a way, I'm still kind of coding because I'm really thinking about things like the data structures. I'm thinking about
Mhm.
like the platform and what's possible. I'm thinking about like how to work things out um, in the game. But then instead of actually going to the nitty gritty of like the little lines of code, I'm just
Right.
telling Claude Code to build it, and then I give it some instruction about how I want it built. To be able to.
Was it here that I talked about the progression of programming languages?
Sounds
The the
familiar.
the
Yeah.
the, the concept is really simple. In the beginning, so to
Yeah.
speak, we programmed by flipping toggle switches on the front of a machine. Then we were able to enter in hexadecimal machine code. Then we were able to use assembly language, a slightly higher level representation. Then we
Hmm.
were able to use programming languages like C, which allowed us to abstract things a little bit more. And we didn't care quite as much about the under the hood details.
Yeah.
Then we went to programming languages like C++. Then we went on to scripting languages like Python and all these others. What's happening now with AI is really just another step in that exact same evolution.
Hmm.
We've created a new programming language and it's called English.
Yeah.
That's all that's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. Well, it's like yeah, the level on top of it. I was always fascinated because I started programming just past the machine code part of things,
Mhm.
you know. So there was still machine code was there, and there were people telling me, "Oh, if you really want stuff to run fast, you know, you got to go down to the
Count those
machine
clock
language code."
cycles. That's where I
And
started.
and then you know, so just enough for me to dabble, but not really ever make anything. And then I was building on the stuff that was on top of that. But
Right.
then, you know, more and more layers kept getting added on, IDEs, and now we have things like, you know, Swift UI and all on my side of things. It just take care of lots of stuff for you. And
Yep.
it's building up to that, or building up to like, you know, this thing. But I do love, and I still hope that I have an advantage knowing how to code and then maybe the stuff that I'm finding really easy to do with Claude Code maybe isn't as easy for others
Yep.
because they're
It's
not
very
asking.
possible.
Like at this one point, I had this very difficult problem to solve because Claude Code wasn't getting it. What it was doing is it was not putting. Oh, I in this game it creates these little random dungeons, and in the dungeons there's these little random rooms and they have space inside, you know, a number of squares, like 6 squares or 9 squares or however many.
Mhm.
It's random. And I said, okay, put a monster in each room, but don't put it near the door. So you know you can walk into the room
Right.
and the monster's not blocking the way. You couldn't get it. Like I kept telling it, okay, it should be more than 1 square away from the door. What it kept not doing it. So eventually I said, here's what I want you to do. To place the monster, I want you to make a list of all the available spaces. Then I want you to take the space that's right in front of the door and remove it from the list. Then pick one of the other spaces at random. And it was like,
Yep.
oh, okay. And then it worked from that point on. But it didn't,
Yep.
it was like, you know, okay. So it
So
helped out a little bit. You know, it's good.
the same model is
Example.
true, though. The fact that you understand coding and data structures and all that kind of stuff makes you a better, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term these days, a better vibe coder, right?
Yeah. Vibe
People
coder.
that
Yeah.
don't have that background won't have that advantage.
Hmm.
That's always been true. Back in the day when we were coding our programs in C,
Hmm.
those people that understood assembly language, especially the assembly language that the compiler would generate, had a better time debugging their program, understanding what was going on, choosing more efficient algorithms, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, understanding what's going on under the hood will always be an advantage, even if you're programming in English.
Hmm. Yep. So
So, I
what
mentioned
else? Yeah.
earlier my Mac Pro. It's
Yes.
the 2013 paint can version of the Mac Pro. It's still chugging along. I mean, it's a nifty little machine still.
Yeah.
And I use it for some, like I said, some backing up and a few other random things. But I heard that the Mac Pro is no more.
Yeah. And yeah, you actually have the one that, you know, the prior model.
Right.
Apple
Well, they
came
went
out.
back to a box, didn't they?
They went back to the big box. I had two of those big towers previously
Uh-huh.
and loved them. I went to I always call it the trash can version of it. Somebody found like a you know Scandinavian design trash can that it's almost identical to it at one point. You know, so
Of
they were
course.
like put them side by side. The and I had that one. And what a great machine.
Hmm.
And I actually they came out with a tower later, but it was still Intel. And I upgraded, and I wish I didn't. I wish I had kept just for a few more years that one because it really worked well. And then they went to a M1 Ultra Mac Pro, or it was an M2 Ultra Mac Pro, the last version. So they did come out with it. And the only real substantial difference between a Mac Studio and the Mac Pro was you had this big tower that was adapted to have the old PCIe cards,
Right.
right? But those are just, I mean, you have Thunderbolt now.
Right.
You know, you could plug Thunderbolt devices into it. You don't really need it for very much. And the market was just shrinking and shrinking for that kind of thing. And PCIe is kind of a technology that works hand in hand with Intel. So
Right.
there was some big adaptation they had to do to get it to work with Apple Silicon. So it was probably the right call to get rid of it. Um, the Mac Studio is now the high end, and it's extremely similar to the one you're talking about, the cylindrical Mac Pro. most people like me would say that the cylindrical Mac Pro in capabilities and price, because it was also about a $3,000 machine, um, that went from there to the Mac Studio. There's a couple of year gap, and that's because the Studio, the Mac Pros, the big tower ones were much more expensive. What they did
Right.
with that cylinder is they said, okay, it's just going to be external devices, but they allowed you to upgrade the memory and the storage, but still you attach external devices to it,
Hmm.
and they brought the price way down, and I think that's basically what the Mac Studio is now. You can get a really powerful Mac Studio. It was really hard to justify spending the money on a Mac Pro unless you had a very specific use for it
Right.
over the Mac Studio, right? And I've had a M1 Ultra Mac Studio. Now it's 5 years old now,
Uh-huh.
which is incredible. But and the rumors are there will be a new one out. And the problem is, I'm not feeling its age at all.
Right.
Like I've got 64 gigs of RAM in it. I got a 2 terabyte drive in it, and it's the Ultra, so it's the double Max, two Max processors in it that are like
Mm-hmm.
mirror to each other and doubling everything. And it just handles everything I throw to it. I'm pretty convinced that if I got an M5 Ultra, if that's what comes out, I would definitely see like a boost in speed, but it wouldn't be something that would be like life changing.
Right.
It would just
Right.
be like, oh, it's
Right.
a bit zippier. I thought it was zippy before. It turns out there was a speed above zippy. So I don't even know if I'm in the market for one if Apple comes out with a new Mac Studio this year. So anyway, I had a large, wide variety of the Mac Pros, and before that, the Power Macs. They
Oh
called a
yeah.
lot of things Power Macs, but there were the higher end Power Macs, like the Power Mac 8500, that kind of thing, that were kind of the precursor towers to the first Mac Pro. So I had a long line of those. So um, my first thought is, well, just because they said it's dead, it's like Cher doing a farewell tour. It's like there's probably more, there'll be more opportunities.
There was an interesting observation I read from somebody though, is that um, Apple has made it clear that they don't want you to open their machines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that Pro that's being discontinued, if I understand it correctly, that's the only one that's designed to be opened and upgraded.
I'm trying to think now if there's anything in the Mac Mini. The strange thing is the Neo, the MacBook Neo is very repairable and openable. It's
But
not
it's not
meant to be.
upgradable.
No,
Okay.
well, so it's not meant to be, right? But they apparently there's been, several people that have taken it apart. They didn't use glue, they didn't use tape. Everything screws and latches
Interesting.
and it comes apart very cleanly.
Nice.
The drive, which is only, you can get the 256 or the 512,
Right.
you could pull that out and somebody has tried sticking a bigger one in there and it works.
It's a standard, what, M2
Yeah, I don't, yeah.
form factor or whatever the heck that
MV,
is. Yeah.
NVE or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, somebody's tried it now, it's not technically supported. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything about like somebody using it for a long period of time like that. But, it is surprisingly repairable.
Hmm.
Um, Apple didn't have to do that, right? They could have said, let's cut more corners, put more tape, more whatever into it.
Right.
But they seem to have made it easy to repair, probably for themselves. I mean, they were probably like, hey, we're producing a $600 Mac here. Somebody's going to drop bowling balls on them. Somebody's going to spill stuff on them. Somebody's going to, they're going to come in and they're going to be broken. And one out of every 5,000 is going to have some sort of manufacturing flaw, whatever. We're
Right.
getting them in. They're going to start coming into our shops. Let's make it easier on ourselves and the authorized repair people to fix them. So
Right.
they have made it like that. So it's kind of like, yeah, they're not making it so they're welcoming you to open it up and change it, but they're also not going out of their way to, lock them down like I think they may be more used to, like
Right.
maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So, so yeah, there's that, and of course, there's the whole thing. Speaking of Apple, I guess we didn't have an episode last week, but April 1st marked Apple's 50th anniversary. So that was 50 years since April 1st, 1976.
Where
when
was I
Jobs
in
and Wozniak.
1976? I
Yeah,
was
I can't remember. I've read so many books on it. I can't remember. I think that was just when they incorporated, when they created.
right,
Um,
right.
so, they were working on stuff before then, and they were about to or had come out with the Apple One, the original.
In
Um,
1976,
yeah,
I was starting my first year at the University of Washington,
yeah.
and I had not yet touched a computer at all. That didn't happen until the sophomore year, the requirement of Engineering 141, Introduction to Fortran Programming.
Yeah, I
I think
definitely
I've
had.
told you that my first computer, the first computer I ever purchased, was in
Yeah.
fact an Apple II.
Oh, okay. I definitely wasn't, see, 1976, I was very young. I do remember since I grew up in Philadelphia, 1976 was a big year, and I have
Of
lots
course.
of fond memories of things going on downtown for the bicentennial,
Yes.
as well as Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, where there were reenactments and such and all of that. So, but yeah, 50 years. So I did, well, I'll talk about it later, but the video I did about it. But it is interesting that it's been that long. I mean, in some ways it feels like, oh yeah, wow, it's been a long time. In other ways, it's like, wow. I mean, from the Apple One to the MacBook Neo, you know,
Right.
to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. That would have Wozniak and Jobs sitting in the garage there. If somebody from the future had come back and shown them the iPhone 17 Pro Max, that probably would have blown their minds more than the MacBook Neo. Like the MacBook Neo, they probably would open up and immediately knew what it was and how to use it. The iPhone 17, the latest iPhone, they would probably be like, "What?" And then maybe the AirPods too. That would have been incredible to them. But the 50 years is kind of a short period of time when you think about it.
Well, it's an amazing period of time for
Yes.
what Apple has been doing and what the industry has been doing in general, for sure.
Hmm. Yep.
So, let's see. So, what's cool? So, you got to do yours first.
Okay, I got to do mine first. So obviously, I have to talk about Project Hail Mary. I've talked about it before
It's
on
a
the
three-peat.
show. Yeah,
You
because
mentioned it, I mentioned
then
it
the
for not
yeah the
remembering,
book,
and
how great the book is, and how it's one of
yep,
my favorite books of the last decade or so. Um, I've read it twice. Really excited about the movie. Went and saw the movie. Thought it was wonderful. I
yep.
I thought actually, and I've said this immediately afterwards, and still believe it now, 3 weeks later. It is the best film adaptation of a science fiction novel I've ever seen.
Cool.
The reason for that is because, first, it didn't make any substantial changes to the story.
Okay.
None at all, right?
Nice.
No, which is like, it's so remarkable in that it's not perfect, but for the 95% of it is exactly the same as the book.
Right.
The other thing is the book is filled with lots of scientific details
Yes.
and explanations about how things work, why things are, all of this, which makes the book really interesting. There's no way they can get that into a movie. First of all, the movie would be 10 hours long.
Right.
Second of all, most of the audience would have no idea what was going on, right? If you got to be into the science and the engineering. They, instead of saying, we'll just take that stuff out, they did the opposite and said, we'll leave all of that stuff in and just not bother to explain it. So the ship, all these details of the ship are from the book.
Right.
They don't bother to explain it. There's screens and things in the background that are there from the book. They don't bother to explain it. Little details, things that are said, things about, what's going on Earth, all this stuff they leave in without explaining it so that if you didn't read the book, you could just think they're background things. I mean, there's got to be something on the screens. The
Hmm.
spaceship's got to look some way, right? There
Hmm.
has to be some reason. Special effects have to pick some color for this thing and that thing, right? So they did it, and you don't care. But if you did read the book, you could look and say, they left that in. That's what, I know why that is like it is. I know
Right.
why this happened. They didn't explain it, but I know why because I read the book, which makes it incredible to watch as somebody that loves the book because they leave that stuff in there for you. And I think they did that on purpose so the book lovers will love the movie and the people that didn't read the book won't be burdened by it. But then as a side effect, it basically made all those things Easter eggs. So that now there's all these videos going on.
Right.
People can make, if I made entertainment type content, it's like such a huge resource, source of cool videos you could make. You could say, here's something I bet you didn't know when you saw Hail Mary. This is why this thing is in the ship,
Right.
and you could
Right.
explain it. And it's there. So it turns into like an endless treasure trove of Easter eggs for people to explain online and people that liked the movie to go and say, "Oh, there was a reason for that." Tell me. So anyway, so it was great. And then and it like the book, it succeeded in giving you the feels. And also it is such a non-Hollywood movie. There's no love story. There's no love interest. There is, I mean, there's no villain. There's no villain. Of course, you can make a case for,
Of course.
but really, there's no real villain in it. I mean, how
Right.
is there a major blockbuster movie that has no villain and no love story? But that's what Hail
It's
Mary
a
is.
it's a buddy movie.
It
It
is
turns out
it is very much a buddy movie. And even the buddy stuff, the fact that they're friends, there's stuff in the book that explains that.
right.
Right? So the thing is, it's like people can leave the movie. I've already heard this. I've already heard people say, like, oh, but so what are the chances that, Rocky and Grace were, but I was like, that's explained in the book. I can tell you why. I can tell you why they're about the same level of intelligence. I can tell you why they were both there. That's
Right.
all explained in the book. And they didn't take it out. They just didn't explain it to you. So I can tell you, or you can go read the book, which is what you should do. Go read the book and then go see the movie again.
Again, yes, exactly. Yep. It's funny. Um, that just reminds me of kind of the opposite in the sense that if you could watch this movie either way, having read the book or not, and it is still a good experience. You'll
Hmm.
enjoy it, right?
Hmm.
I haven't seen it yet, by the way, and I'm glad to hear your review being so positive. But yes, see the movie, read the book, see the movie again, and you'll learn so much. Reminds me of my original experience with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Mm.
Saw the movie, read the book, saw the movie, read the book, saw the movie, still didn't understand the ending. All righty,
So it was six. That was what was so great about the movie 2001. You don't
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
understand the ending at the end of the book, and the movie didn't explain
It
the ending
matched.
either.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well done, Kubrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Ain't It Cool is something that my wife and I stumbled onto on Amazon Prime's Britbox, although it's actually a BBC program, called QI, which apparently stands for quite interesting. It
Mm.
is a comedy trivia show with basically British stand-up comedians and other notables that being from over here, I have recognized like maybe one out of 12, just
Mm.
but it's one of those things where in typical British fashion, it's very dry humor, it's very good humor, it's a lot of fun stuff on there, but you end up learning stuff because you're watching this silly trivia program. The trivia that they present, the knowledge that they present, is truly random, truly interesting, and truly something that, okay, I actually, unlike so many other programs, I feel a little smarter after having watched this.
Mm.
So, yeah, QI. There are 20 some odd seasons of this program. We're watching them in reverse season order just because we stumbled on the most recent one and we're working backwards. They have an interesting quirk. Each season is designated by a letter. So the first season is season A, then season B, then season C. We're currently watching season T. But what they do then is they use words beginning with that letter as like the theme for each episode.
Oh.
So kind of cool.
Huh. That is cool. I'll have to check that
QI
out. Yeah, it
on,
sounds like something I would like.
like I said, we watch it on Amazon Prime's Britbox subscription, but it's on the BBC.
Cool. All right. So speaking, more cool stuff is the stuff that we've got. And I'll start off with I did do a video, like I quickly mentioned before, on Apple's 50th. I actually did a video on the Mac's 40th anniversary
Hmm.
little over a year ago. That was a
Oh,
timeline with music and animation and everything. And
I remember that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
worked for like 3 weeks on it, and like 2,000 people watched it. It was, I
Ah,
mean, it was like it was a total flop. So I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I decided, well, let me do the opposite. And I basically just turned the camera on and just talked about like the products, going with the idea that Apple's a product-driven company. What are the products that I appreciated the most over the last 50 years
sure.
from Apple?
Yep.
And just made a kind of a personal video saying this is what I got from Apple the last 50 years, like my favorite things.
Yep.
And then I invited people to comment about their experience, and it got a much better response than my
Yes.
my
Not
uh,
surprised.
timeline. Yeah,
Now, the first one could have been AI generated, but this was a
I
real
guess.
person.
Yeah,
So, yes,
now I probably could just say, just make me a timeline of all the Apple products, and it would be like, okay, done.
set it to music and yeah, make a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
So mine, well, is the one I mentioned earlier, how I use AI at Ask Leo. It's recently updated because over the course of 2 years when it was originally published, the tools have changed. The process hasn't changed that much, but the tools have gotten better. So how I'm doing it, some good examples of ways that you might consider using AI yourself. So that's askleo.com/1684449.
Cool.
I believe that brings us to the end of this episode.
Indeed.
As it turns out, we'll be on a slightly extended break. We
Yep.
expect to be back next month.
Mhm.
But until then, as always, thank you very much for listening. And we will see you here again, well, in a month. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The show notes for this week are at tehpodcast.com/TEH265. If you have a comment or question for us, be sure to leave it on the show notes page. The TEH podcast is hosted by Leo Notenboom of AskLeo.com and Gary Rosenzweig of MacMost.com, and edited by Connie Delaney. I'm your synthetic announcer, Adam, from 11labs.com.